Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we try to cut through all the noise and really give you those essential knowledge nuggets you need to understand some of the world's most compelling cultural
Yeah,
figures.
get straight to the core.
Exactly. And today, we are doing a deep dive into someone whose resilience, honestly, is just as powerful as his punchlines. George Edward Lopez, born April 23rd, 1961.
A name most people definitely know.
Oh, absolutely. We're looking at a man whose journey, it's like a masterclass in just sticking with it, spanning over 4 decades in entertainment.
40 years is a long time in that business.
It really is. From those sweaty little stand-up stages, he ended up launching a truly groundbreaking sitcom, then moved into major film voice roles, and even hosted his own late-night show for a bit.
Quite the trajectory.
So our mission today is to kind of uncover the key insights around his career, how it cycled up and down, understand how his, well, incredibly challenging background directly fed his comedic style, and maybe quantify his lasting cultural impact. He was a real pioneer in American media.
Yeah, he really was.
Okay, let's unpack this.
And we're pretty lucky because the sources we have give us a really comprehensive roadmap, almost like a biography of his highs, his lows, and his personal struggles, too.
That's great.
By looking at his life, you see this really direct connection between his personal resilience, like the obstacles he had to overcome, and what he created artistically.
Yeah.
He wasn't just, telling jokes. He was processing his own life, his own trauma right out there in public. And I think that's what really connected with people.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we should probably state right up front, we're not just talking about a successful comedian here, right?
No, definitely not.
The sources point out, okay, he's been active since 1983, but his influence really, exploded in the early 2000s. He got the Imogen Vision Award, the Latino Spirit Award in 2003, recognizing his impact on how people were represented in media.
Big honors early on.
Huge! And maybe the most telling thing. In 2005, Time magazine didn't just, mention him. They named him one of the 25 most influential Hispanics in America. That's recognition that goes way beyond just selling tickets or TV ratings.
It absolutely does. That solidifies his core identity as more than just an entertainer. He's a cultural staple. He managed to master different platforms, stand-up, film, TV, often all at the same time.
Yeah, he was everywhere for a while.
And that multi-platform approach, it was, I think, essential to his goal of getting and keeping visibility for the Latino community in the mainstream.
Right. So to really get that specific brand of comedy, George Lopez does that super sharp, sometimes kind of dark humor. You absolutely have to start with where he came from, Mission Hills, Los Angeles. His childhood wasn't just, working class. The sources say it was really defined by some profound emotional trauma, and that became the fuel for his jokes later on.
That's the absolute crucial context.
Yeah.
The sources, they paint a really stark picture of abandonment. His father left when he was just 2 months old.
Wow.
But then, maybe even more damaging, his mother left him when he was 10.
10 years old.
10. That kind of loss, especially from a mother figure, well, that leaves a deep wound, doesn't it? And it must have shaped how he saw things like authority, family, everything, really.
So he ends up being raised by his maternal grandmother, Benita Gutierrez, who worked in a factory, and his step-grandfather, Refugio Gutierrez, a construction worker.
Right.
So you immediately get this foundation of, hard work, immigrant struggle, deep cultural roots there in the San Fernando Valley. He graduated from San Fernando High School in '79, but it feels like his real education came from that tough working class world.
And that background totally defined his comedy. If you look at the styles he uses, it's not always the gentle, broad humor you might expect from someone starring in a network sitcom.
No. What is it then?
It's a mix. Observational stuff, yeah, sure. But also black comedy, insult comedy, physical comedy, too.
Yeah.
And he really leans into racial humor and satire.
Okay, let's break that down a bit, because just listing styles doesn't quite capture the Lopez thing, When you say black comedy, what does that mean in his work? Is he aiming that dark humor at himself or, institutions?
I think he's using it to process that trauma we talked about and just the disappointments life throws at you. Black comedy, for him, it often involves putting himself down in a way that acknowledges hard truths like being abandoned or being poor, but he delivers it with such a sharp edge that you kind of have to laugh at the painful reality.
Right, that discomfort zone.
Exactly. And his insult comedy, well, that's often aimed right at institutional racism or sometimes those really specific kind of brutal dynamics within Mexican-American families. The tough love and discipline he got from his grandmother, for instance. He talks about that a lot.
And the sources confirm his main subjects are really focused on identity, right? Latin American culture, American politics, race relations, and very personally, the fight against racism. But then he manages to balance those heavy, sometimes political topics with more universal things like, family issues, everyday life, pop culture.
What's really fascinating here, I think, is just how direct the link is between his personal story and his material. Like, it's unfiltered. He used that complicated, challenging background, the factory worker grandma, the abandonment, to shape the specific viewpoint he brings to the stage.
Can you give an example?
Well, think about the grandmother character on the George Lopez show. Stern, but loving. That's a direct reflection, the sources suggest, of Benita Gutierrez and that working class mindset. He took that disciplinary style, the constant pressure to measure up, and made it central to his humor. He literally turned personal pain into sharp commentary that a lot of people found relatable.
And that authenticity, it clearly struck a chord way before the sitcom even existed. We know this because his comedy albums didn't just sell, they got serious recognition.
Yeah, Grammy nominations.
Exactly. Grammy nominations for Best Comedy Album for Team Leader in 2003, America's Mexican in 2007, and Tall, Dark, and Chicano in 2009.
Those Grammy nods, they're more than just awards, right? They establish him as a really top-tier comedic voice, someone whose stuff had national weight. The TV success that came later wasn't an accident. It was built on years of touring and honing a voice known for its sharp insights and pretty uncompromising perspective.
And that groundwork, that reputation, it set the stage for the biggest move of his career, breaking through those network television barriers.
Absolutely, the sitcom era.
Yeah, the moment that really shot George Lopez into the mainstream happened around 2000. And it involved a huge celebrity who saw a major gap in the TV landscape, Sandra Bullock.
Right, Sandra Bullock.
Yeah.
She actively went to Lopez, wanted to produce and star him in a comedy vehicle made just for him.
That's amazing.
And Bullock's involvement wasn't just like a famous friend helping out. It was strategic. Right. The sources are really clear. She was specifically concerned about the almost complete lack of Hispanic-focused sitcoms on American TV then.
I think about it, yeah, there was a massive void at that time.
A vacuum. And ABC, the network that eventually picked up the show, they were feeling the heat. They had been getting criticized pretty heavily by Hispanic American groups for not having enough Latino representation, both on screen and, importantly, behind the camera, too.
So it's like a perfect storm brewing. You've got a proven comic talent in Lopez, a major star producer demanding representation in Bullock,
right,
and a network that kind of needed to solve a PR problem. It felt almost inevitable, like a necessary adjustment.
And the debut of George Lopez in 2002, it was genuinely historic. We need to emphasize that. Lopez became one of just a very few Latinos to star in their own TV comedy series since TV began, following people like Desi Arnaz, Freddie Prinze, John Leguizamo.
Wow, that's quite a lineage.
It really is. This wasn't just another pilot getting picked up. It was like reopening a vital cultural pipeline onto a major network.
And Lopez was totally central to the show's identity. It ran for 6 seasons, 2002 to 2007. And crucially, he wasn't just the star. He was co-creator, writer, producer.
Control.
That multifaceted control, it ensured that the authentic voice, the specific viewpoint he developed doing stand-up, was kept throughout the show's run.
But the real story of the show's success, the thing that makes the cancellation later so controversial, isn't actually in its primetime numbers. It's in its endurance.
What do you mean?
Well, while it was never a massive, top 10 Nielsen hit during its first run on ABC primetime, it didn't always pull in those huge live audiences networks loved back then. Its later success was incredible.
Okay, so this is the syndication part. Explain that for the listener. Why is that phenomenon so significant here?
Syndication success basically means the show lives on and makes a ton of money long after it's off the air. After its ABC run ended, the show became this surprise success when it started airing on Nick at Night in 2007.
Nick at Night, right. Late night reruns.
Yeah. Exactly. Unlike primetime, syndication depends on people watching reruns, often again and again. And the George Lopez show proved it had serious staying power. It attracted huge, loyal viewership, especially among younger, diverse audiences that maybe primetime wasn't fully capturing. And that translates into guaranteed money for years and years.
That kind of proven long-term value only made the cancellation in 2007, which is very public, even more, bitter.
Definitely.
Despite running 6 seasons, despite proving it could make money in syndication, ABC pulled the plug. And Lopez, he did not hold back in his response.
No, he did not. He put the blame squarely on the ABC entertainment president at the time, Steve McPherson. He argued the decision was basically rooted in racial bias, that the network was tired of minority-led shows. He didn't just say he was disappointed, he framed it as a major step backward for representation.
The quotes he gave the press were instantly famous because they were just so cutting. He pointed out the demographic shift ABC was causing, saying essentially TV just became really, really white again now that his show was gone. But the comparison he made was the ultimate comedic jab, right? He lashed out at the network asking, so a Chicano can't be on TV, but a caveman can.
Oof. Yeah, that was a direct shot at Cavemen, that infamous, very short-lived sitcom based on the Geico commercials.
Right, which ABC put in his time slot.
It's such a perfect comedic encapsulation of his argument. The network preferred this racially vague, conceptually weak show based on an ad campaign over a culturally specific, proven, diverse show.
And the sources point out the almost immediate karma of that move. Caveman got terrible reviews and was canceled after just 13 episodes.
Didn't last long at all.
And Lopez really hammered home the human cost, too. He publicly blamed ABC for over 100 people, cast, crew, staff from his show, losing their jobs, connecting the network's decision to real people's lives.
And this whole situation, it really raises a big question that still echoes in TV land. How do networks actually define success? Back in the 2000s, they were obsessed with those live, primetime Nielsen numbers, the immediate viewership.
Right, the overnight ratings.
They maybe failed to fully grasp the huge long-term value of a show that builds a dedicated following and proves itself in syndication. Lopez's cancellation became this sort of flashpoint for discussing institutional barriers in Hollywood. It highlighted how traditional ways of measuring success maybe didn't capture cultural impact or that long-term profit potential, especially with niche or minority audiences.
So despite that really contentious end to his first big sitcom run, Lopez didn't just vanish. He made a pretty major pivot, jumping into the very tough world of late-night TV.
Yeah, in November 2009, he launched Lopez Tonight on TBS, Monday through Thursday, midnight Eastern.
That was a big statement in itself, wasn't it?
Huge. Late-night TV has always been this very exclusive club, almost entirely white, almost entirely male. Lopez getting a show there gave a prominent, unapologetically Latino voice a seat at that table, talking about current events, interviewing the big stars, but with his own unique satirical spin.
His time there, though, got tangled up pretty quickly in one of the biggest TV dramas in recent memory, the whole late-night wars thing with Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien over at NBC.
Right.
When Conan left NBC and moved to TBS in 2010, Lopez Tonight had to shift its time slot, moving back to midnight ET to give Conan the better 11 p.m. slot.
And what's often forgotten, but the sources really emphasize this, is how differently Lopez handled that situation compared to the NBC mess. While the Leno-Conan thing was full of public anger and professional bad blood,
Yeah, it was nasty.
Lopez actually supported the move to accommodate Conan. He actively advocated for it, apparently, showed a lot of professional class, even though it meant giving up his prime late-night spot.
That's interesting. He kind of showed the industry, hey, these transitions can be done with respect. The show ran for 2 seasons before TBS canceled it in August 2011, but he still got recognized, right? Nominated for a People's Choice Award for Favorite Talk Show Host in 2011.
Yeah, he did. And after the late-night show ended, Lopez showed this incredible, maybe you could even say stubborn, commitment to the sitcom format.
Yeah.
He was determined to prove his voice still belonged on TV in that way. He tried multiple times, each with a different kind of business model behind it.
Okay, so the first attempt after Lopez Tonight was St. George on FX in 2014. This is where we need to maybe explain a bit of industry stuff for the listener. This show used what's called the DeMar Mercury Lionsgate 1090 syndication model. It's a really interesting but high-risk way of making TV.
Exactly. So basically, the traditional way of making a show is slow and expensive. You make a pilot, the network tests it, maybe orders a few episodes, but maybe more. The 1090 model skips a lot of that.
How does it work?
The network orders just 10 episodes up front. If those 10 episodes hit a very specific, usually quite high, ratings target,
Okay.
then the network is automatically locked in, contractually obligated to order 90 more episodes immediately.
90. Wow, so you go from 10 episodes straight to 100.
Pretty much. The idea is you get cheap, fast content that hits that magic 100-episode number you need for profitable syndication really quickly. But the risk for the show itself is huge. It sets an almost impossibly high bar for those first 10 episodes.
And what happened with St. George?
Unfortunately for Lopez, the sources say it just didn't hit those ratings numbers, so it was canceled quickly after just those first 10 shows aired. It's a perfect example of how the business side, not just how good the show is, can decide if a show lives or dies.
But he kept trying. He did Lopez from 2016 to 2017 on TV Land. That was different, right? Semi-autobiographical, single-camera format. Ran for 24 episodes.
Yeah, it showed he still believed that TV comedy was the right place for his perspective, even if the networks or the models kept shifting under him.
Which brings us kind of full circle, doesn't it? His current success with Lopez vs. Lopez debuted in 2022 on NBC, running through 2025. He's back on a major network.
And this time, he's co-starring with his own daughter, Mayan. Which is fascinating. Brings those complex family dynamics that were always part of his stand-up right into the main story for a whole new generation.
Yeah, that's a great point. We should also briefly mention he wasn't only doing comedy. He was a cast member and commentator for HBO's Inside the NFL for the 2003-04 season. Showed some versatility there.
Good branching out.
And he popped up as a guest judge on America's Got Talent in 2016. He famously used his golden buzzer on Malevo, that Argentinian dance group, showed he still had an eye for talent and maybe a desire to mentor.
Moving into his film work, Lopez really carved out two very distinct paths that kept him incredibly visible and, frankly, successful financially.
Okay, what were those paths?
On one hand, he took dramatic roles that often spoke directly to cultural identity. On the other, he did these massive high-profile voice acting roles, usually aimed at global family audiences.
His film breakthrough was actually dramatic, wasn't it? I mean, he was in Bread and Roses back in 2000, but it was that HBO Films drama Real Women Have Curves in 2002 that really got attention.
Yeah, that premiered at Sundance, won the Audience Award. It showed early on that he wasn't just a stand-up comic. He had serious acting chops, dramatic depth.
Absolutely. But the sources really highlight how he found this incredibly consistent and profitable niche in voice acting. His voice just worked perfectly for these energetic, often funny animal characters, made him a staple for families everywhere.
The reach of those voice roles is just staggering when you list them out. He was Pappy, the little Chihuahua in Beverly Hills Chihuahua 3 times, 2008, 2011, 2012.
Kids loved Pappy.
They did. And he was Raphael, the upbeat toucan in the huge animated hit Rio in 2011, and the sequel Rio 2 in 2014.
Another big one.
And he even took on an iconic character, voicing Grouchy Smurf in the Smurfs movies in 2011 and 2013.
Okay, let's pause and think about that. Why was this voice work so important strategically? What was it about his voice?
Well, it's super high energy, right?
Yeah.
Instantly recognizable. And importantly, it let him reach young, diverse families who maybe weren't watching his sitcom reruns late at night. It kept him constantly present in the lives of a whole younger generation. Guaranteed his longevity, in a way.
That makes sense. He also did some pretty memorable live-action genre roles, too. Like, thinking back to Robert Rodriguez's The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl in 3D from 2005. He played, like, 4 characters in that Mr. Electricidad, Mr. Electric, Tubor, the Ice Guardian.
Oh, yeah. A wild performance. Very campy, very memorable.
Yeah.
Kept him in that family action space.
Then later he played the bad guy, Glaze, in The Spy Next Door with Jackie Chan in 2010. And most recently, a pretty significant return to the superhero world in DC's Blue Beetle in 2023. He played Rudy Reyes, the uncle, provided a lot of the humor, but also that deep family connection.
And that role was important, too, because Blue Beetle itself was seen as a big step forward for Latino representation in superhero movies.
Definitely. And we know he's still working. He's set to star as Coach Fies in a 2024 film called The Underdogs.
Still going strong.
Plus, beyond acting, he documented his life in that 2007 film, Brown is the New Green. George Lopez and the American Dream. Really positioning himself right in the middle of discussions about America's changing demographics. And his autobiography, Why You Crying? Co-written with Armin Katayan, that was a New York Times bestseller.
So if you synthesize his film career, you see this dual nature, and that's what really stands out, I think, strategically. He pivots so easily between those big family-friendly voice roles that guarantee eyeballs and box office,
Right.
and then these live-action projects like Real Women Have Curves, or even a later indie film like El Chicano in 2019, where he played Captain Gomez, that directly tackled cultural identity and social issues. That versatility kept him relevant to almost every audience group. It cemented him as just a permanent part of American entertainment.
Yeah, it's quite a balancing act. Now, the story of George Lopez, it seems like personal struggles are always woven into his public work. And this comes through maybe most vividly with his health journey, which happened right at the peak of his sitcom fame. But first, just to frame his family life. Sources say he married Anne Serrano in 1993. They had their daughter Mayan in 1996. They separated around 2010, and the divorce was final in 2011.
And the kidney transplant story, it's probably the most profound example of his dedication, maybe even sacrifice for his work. Lopez has a genetic condition, apparently, that caused his kidneys to fail. A really serious, life-threatening chronic illness that he was dealing with while he was co-creating, writing, producing, and starring in a major network show.
Let's just pause on the timeline here because the sources say it's critical. His doctors told him in April 2004 that he urgently needed an organ transplant, like needed it.
Not elective surgery. Life-saving.
Exactly. Yet Lopez made the decision, according to the sources, to put off the surgery until after they finished filming the entire 4th season of George Lopez.
Think about that. He literally chose to risk his own health, potentially his life, for the stability of his show, his crew. You have to wonder what that says about the weight he felt carrying that show, being one of the few Latinos headlining a network comedy.
Yeah, the pressure must have been immense. Like, a pressure maybe few other stars experience, that feeling of representing more than just yourself. The need to not fail, to keep the show going, keep over 100 people employed.
It's an extraordinary choice.
Thankfully, the surgery, when it happened in 2005, was successful. His then-wife, Ann Serrano, donated one of her kidneys to him. And after the operation, he apparently lost 45 pounds, a sign of his improved health.
And then, in a really powerful move, he used that incredibly personal, difficult experience and worked it into the show itself. His character's father on George Lopez, Manny, was diagnosed with a similar kidney illness.
Right. I remember that storyline.
Brought huge visibility to kidney health, the importance of organ donation, the need for early diagnosis, especially within the Latino community where these issues can sometimes be less discussed, using his platform for education.
And that dedication to community, it seems like a constant thread throughout his whole career, right? Goes way beyond just TV storylines. He heads his own foundation, the Ann and George Lopez Foundation.
And his work was recognized pretty early on. He was named honorary mayor of Los Angeles because he did a lot of fundraising for earthquake victims in El Salvador and Guatemala.
Wow.
And Harvard University, no less, recognized both his art and his charity work. The Harvard Foundation gave him the 2004 Artist of the Year and Humanitarian Award.
That's impressive. And his impact is really concrete back where he grew up, too. In 2011, the elementary school he went to, San Fernando Elementary, they named their auditorium after him.
That's amazing.
Partly because he'd been doing this annual toy giveaway for years, making sure every single kid at the school got a Christmas gift. That's a real, lasting contribution, closing the loop back to the working-class community that raised him.
We should probably also touch on his documented public stances, just based on the sources. Politically, he aligns with the Democratic Party, famously endorsed Bernie Sanders back in 2016.
Okay. And the sources also note his support for Israel. Apparently, he signed an open letter supporting Israel during the conflict in Gaza in October 2023.
Right, that's noted.
Yeah.
And regarding faith, though he was raised Catholic, the sources say he's not religious now, but does believe in God and, quote, the biblical themes of faith and love.
Got it.
And finally, something maybe people don't know, is his role as a business figure within the comedy world itself. For 5 years, 2011 to 2016, he was the creative director for comedy for Carnival Cruises.
Creative director for comedy, what does that entail?
It means he wasn't just performing on the ships. He was actually consulting for the whole cruise line, vetting and hiring the comedians for their punchliner comedy clubs across the entire fleet.
So he was shaping the comedy scene at sea, basically?
For half a decade. It really speaks to his business sense. He wasn't just a performer. He was involved in the industry behind the scenes, deciding who got stage time on this massive platform.
Okay, so bringing this all together.
Well, our deep dive into George Lopez, it really shows an artist who's defined by this just unrelenting persistence. He kept proving he had value in the market, whether it was his stand-up albums, that incredible syndication success of the first sitcom, or how he managed to pivot after setbacks like the late-night cancellation or the 1090 show failing.
Yeah, he always found another way.
Exactly. He's a cultural figure whose own very personal struggles directly informed his comedy and his activism. And the result is this lasting legacy of, I think, representation and just pure resilience.
And that longevity, that impact, it was formally recognized by the industry, too. Beyond the Time magazine honor, we should remember he got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame back in 2006, specifically for television.
Right, cemented in history.
He's a figure whose influence is locked into pop culture, not just for the laughs, but for the doors he kicked open. So we'll leave you, the listener, with this final thought to chew on. Considering the incredible lengths George Lopez went to, I mean, literally putting off life-saving kidney surgery until his show wrapped its season, what does that extraordinary choice fundamentally tell you about the unique weight, the immense personal sacrifices that might be required when an artist becomes, intentionally or not, a primary cultural pioneer, representing an entire community on mainstream American TV.
It's a heavy question.
It is. We encourage you to think about that balance, that tension between personal risk and public responsibility.